Hello everyone, welcome back to another video of my opinions about classical music. If you are new here, welcome, I'm super happy to see you. And if you're an old viewer, welcome back. I am of course happy to see you too. Today I have an exciting video for you. I am going to talk about Twoset Violin's Navarra from their World Tour concert in Berlin. As you probably know if you watched my previous video, I was there. And the recording I'm basing this analysis off is my own recording of the concert. And I'm not gonna lie, if I hadn't made that recording, I would probably not be able to say anything about this performance. And that is simply because in the moment I was too awestruck to even think about anything. So before we even start, I'm going to hand out some gold stars, both to Brett and Eddie of course, but definitely also to Sophie. And if you watched my previous video, I am sure you know why I'm handing out special gold stars to her. But okay, let's just jump right into some parts I really liked about this performance. Starting with the beginning. Let's just listen to the opening first. What I suspect to have happened here is that they have practiced the beginning a lot more than the ending. Which of course is very common to do, because you always start with the beginning when you start to practice, right? And in this case it has resulted in an amazing opening. I really love the phrasing that they do and their little dynamic shifts and all of that. Both of those elements kind of work together to create what feels like one long line that is also divided into smaller lines, rather than just multiple smaller bits. There is very little I would change with this opening. The only little thing is this part right here, this tiny little rest. In the hall itself, I'm not entirely sure you can actually tell in the recording, but in the hall itself this felt very short. At least to me, anyway. And that is because it was quite a resonant hall. And the resonant hall made it so that the line that previously played were still sounding in the hall when they started the next bit. And for me that kind of muddled the transition a little bit. How they did it would have worked perfectly in a less resonant hall, but in this specific hall it could have been slightly longer. Adding a bit more time in that rest would have added a bit more tension in the music. And I really think it would have elevated the opening and captured the audience's attention much more efficiently if they had done that. But really, this is such a minor thing and I'm just picking on it because the rest of it is so good. I also want to add that the next bit that follows the rest is super tight. Meaning that they are super in sync on the rhythms. Basically, they had really good contact with each other while playing. Let's listen to the opening one more time and see if you agree on the rest thing that I mentioned earlier. Then we move on to the next bit I like, which is the next bit. In this part, what I do want to highlight is how much work Sophie does for the dynamics. Sure, Brett and Eddie do something about the dynamic, but it's Sophie who's actually making the big difference here. Let's have a quick listen and you tell me in the comments if you agree. Let me know if you agreed. Now the next part I want to talk about is basically just a really good character change in their playing. And that is this part right here where they go from a more divided character, you can kind of see it in the score as well how the melody is divided between them, to a more smooth and connected character in this next bit. And then of course it happens twice, because that's how it's written in the score, so let's just listen to both the times it happens. The next bit here I don't really care all that much for. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't as great as everything else. Again, here in this part it's really obvious that Sophie does most of the work on the dynamics, and she does all the stuff that's written in the score at least, and Brett and Eddie are maybe doing a bit of it, but it's not really to the extent that the score calls for. Then there is this bit, which is fine, I guess, but I can't really make out the melody, which is a minus for me. So instead of listening to the okay bits, we are jumping right into my favorite bit of this performance. One of the main reasons I really like this bit is how relaxed they seem when they play it. It doesn't feel like it's hard to play, it doesn't feel like it's a struggle to play it, it's just a good time, which to me matches the spirit of the piece perfectly. And I guess I could go through every little detail on why I really like this part, but it's 4 pages long and it will take forever. Instead, I'll just play the full part for you, and I hope you'll enjoy it just as much as I did watching it live. So, do you agree? Do they feel more relaxed and free in this part? My favorite bit about making these videos is hearing your thoughts as well, so do let me know what you think. Now, I'm going to skip ahead again, but that's just because the next bit is consisting of basically just scales. And while I love scales as much as the next person, and I'm sure Twoset had a great time practicing these scales, it's not that interesting to listen to. Of course, I am exaggerating as I often do, but there's not much to say about this bit, so I'm going to skip to these bars instead. In these 4 bars, I really love how great their contact with each other is. It really sounds like there's just one of them playing, which I think is really impressive. Especially because they're playing 2 different notes. So let's listen to this bit with just a little bit before and after it. The next bit I would call the trilling bit, and that's because the whole thing is just trills. And across the board I really like this bit. I particularly like their phrasing and also their contact, which has been a theme throughout. If I were to change anything in this part, it would be that I wish the trills felt slightly lighter. To me, it felt a bit like they sat a bit too much on the trills, while I feel like it should be more like birds chirping, a bit lighter in a way. But again, I'm really only picking on it because it's really good, and I'm not even gonna pretend I can do any better. So let's listen through this bit before we move to the ending of the piece. Now the first bit of the ending that we are moving into is the same as the beginning of the piece. And the same things are good and the same things are bad. The only difference is really that it goes a notch faster. Then we get to this bit, which has a bunch of harmonics, which is a bit harder to play, and I think they're doing it really well. I'm not a big fan of this next bit, but that's not Twoset's fault, that's Sarasate's fault. Twoset does their best with the tools that's been provided to them. And then we get to rehearsal mark 14, which also none of this is really Twoset's fault, but it kinda is. Because in this part they start out fortissimo, meaning really loudly. And I know it does say that you should start out fortissimo here. But I think that to have the spectacular ending that the rest of this material really wants and requires, you need to be able to take it one step further in the last 4 bars. If you start out by playing as loud as you possibly can in bar 14, you have lost. And I know exactly how easy it is to get this super excited feeling and you just do it without thinking too much about it. It's the last piece of the concert, you're really fired up and everything's just like, wow, we can do anything. But then you get to the last 4 bars and you want to take it even further, but it's physically not possible to do so. Because you already reached the peak 10 bars earlier. And I think that's what happened here. It sounded great, but we lacked this last lift at the ending. So to round off this video, I am going to play the full ending for you. And that was everything I had to say. Thank you so much to Twoset and Sophie for this excellent performance. Multiple gold stars to all of you, and also gold stars to all of the viewers of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had just as great a time watching this as I had making it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and also if you enjoyed it, maybe consider pressing the subscribe button, though of course there's always no pressure on any of that. But I do hope I see you next time.